It's all anyone wants to talk about everywhere I go. Brandon Aiyuk, what's going on? And obviously, when a player does what he's doing, most fans are like, I just want that guy. Like, I want him to play for us, And I think people are, A, exhausted, B, frustrated, and C, want a resolution that somehow ends up with not losing him, at least for this year.
Yeah.
And it just feels to me like we're in this big circle of who has leverage, who doesn't have leverage, who's going to play, who's not going to play, who's offered what. It's all over the place. I mean, from New England coming out and saying some reports $28.5 million, some saying it could have been worth up to $32.5 million per year. Who knows?
Yeah.
But once I think that the Niners allowed him to negotiate outside of the building, I think it was really difficult to be able to put this genie back in the bottle. And so, their business tactic on this one, timeline-wise, their business tactic on understanding how the player, or at least having a feel for how the player was going to respond or how the agent was going to respond, a lot of it feels off in this one. And the Niners, I'm sure, are regretting lots of different things throughout this process.
At this point, look, I'm looking at Ricky Pearsall. He's having trouble staying on the field. Jawan Jennings having a hell of a camp. We'll see about Chris Conley. We had a caller yesterday say, Chris Conley, Bonte, what? Well, he was breaking the huddle at times as a starting extra wide receiver. At this point, I would play hardball with Brandon Aiyuk because I understand both sides of the equation. And you're right about the timeline. This is bad business to wait until this point of the season, training camp, to move your starting ex-wide receiver who had a special year. And I hear people say, he's the fourth option on the football team. Well, he could be your number one option next year because we don't know what the hell the future holds for Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey's dealing with a calf. He may be your number one option next year in a passing game. I would play hardball. I cannot allow Brandon Aiyuk at this point to play for anybody but my team. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. And look, you may make the player disgruntled, but you got to do what you got to do, and you got to call his bluff. Are you really going to sit out a year of football? Are you really going to sit out a year of NFL football and forfeit? And then all of a sudden, you got your contract. You're not going to be a free agent next year. You're going to have to play for the 14.
Well, we've seen one player do that in the last decade, and that was Le'Veon Bell. And he's admitted since happening, like, it wasn't, the greatest financially because he did miss, I think, $17 million that year. But also he just lost a year of football and he lost the feel a little to a degree. And you only get 7-8 years of the good players, 7 or 8 years of your prime. And you don't want to risk that. There's so much on the line. And I know that Aiyuk has a lot for him, professionally, personally, individually. The Niners have so much on the line in terms of like this window. Yeah. The window is now. Purdy's only going to get more expensive. The roster's only going to get older. It's going to get more expensive or younger, right? And you're looking around the league, and the Warriors are the first team that can admit this. Like, everybody who's young is going to be then hitting their prime. As you're an older team, you will be coming out of your prime. And the beauty of what the Patriots did was they defied that by constantly turning the roster over. Yeah. Well, we can already tell, like, hey, maybe Pearsall develops one day into a very good player. Sure feels like a lot to put on his plate now on a win-now situation. Yeah. Like, I think that's asking a lot.
That is asking a lot. Matt Barrows joined Willard and Dibs yesterday. Matt Barrows has been good. A lot of good beat writers on this situation, man. Not over-reporting, just kind of giving us the nuts and bolts and keeping us afloat on what's going on here. Matt Barrows asked if it's most likely Aiyuk stays as a Niner.
Let me phrase it this way. I think that's still the outcome that the 49ers want. It's up to Brandon Aiyuk to decide whether he wants that or not. I mean, I don't know what the trade package is that Pittsburgh is offering right now, but I do know that the 49ers prefer to have a wide receiver as part of that trade package. And you look up and down the Steelers roster, and there are not a lot of desirable wide receivers. This is why the Steelers would be interested in this scenario. There is reason for the 49ers to say no to this. But, another reason is to keep Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, if Washington and Pittsburgh are the two places that he wants to go, and Washington's not interested in the contract, and Pittsburgh doesn't have the ammunition to work out a deal, the 49ers are basically telling Brandon Aiyuk, okay, it's time to go to your third option, which presumably is the 49ers.
So I'm with Matt there. You want a receiver back. You're not getting George Pickens. Why would the Steelers trade George Pickens, a guy they invested in, a young man out of Georgia who's coming along? And look, he had a lot of bad quarterbacks, a terrible offensive coordinator, went over 1,000 yards. They're trying to pair Brandon Aiyuk with George Pickens. So when you look at their roster, their wide receivers, you got it. You want to get a playmaker back. I get where the Niners are coming from. Maybe they're asking for a king's ransom. Maybe they're asking for a couple first-round picks. But I could see this playing out like the Jimmy Garoppolo situation where he's on a little baby field throwing 5-yard passes, and they're looking for top-flight compensation. They're looking for top-of-the-line compensation, first-round picks, whatever the case may be. And no team's budged. They said, you're either going to have to cut him and we'll sign him as a free agent, or you just hold on to him. And what ended up happening? They ended up restructuring Jimmy Garoppolo, and he ended up being on the football team. This may go that direction where the 49ers are saying, Pittsburgh, you can't give us what we want. We're not going to budge on what we want for Brandon Aiyuk and the second-team All-Pro. So, therefore, we're going to just sit here and say, you know what? No deal. We're not trading this guy.
But then the part that I'm flabbergasted that, well, we need a receiver back in return. There were 35 wide receivers drafted in 2024. 35, and you took 2.
Yeah.
You took 2. So if you had foresight and you understood, look, I'm going to bring up a saying that I have. It's called KYP. When you're on the field or out in life, KYP is important. Know your personnel. All right? So let's say you're the shortstop. Ball's hitting the gap, and I know that you don't have the greatest arm. I better go out there a little farther than I normally would to receive that cut. Know your personnel. Conversely, if you're, let's just say, Dante Culpepper, and we were talking about him beforehand, and I know you've got a rocket arm, and I'm going to dial up some plays to kind of showcase that arm. I know your personnel. In this situation, you have to have a feeling as a team. How is Brandon Aiyuk going to react with his camp if these negotiations don't go well? You have to know the player. Yep. You have to have a good feel for what he's going to do. And we could argue about the amount of money. And this. Some guys can react well to that. Trent Williams, just out of sight, out of mind. Yep. He's kind of a cool cucumber.
By the way, Trent Williams, real quick, I'm not playing Brock Purdy until Trent Williams shows up to camp. I can't have Brock Purdy play behind some of these left tackles. I can't risk that.
Hey, look, as players are fighting all over the league,
Trent's not playing. Brock, you're not playing either.
But like, I'm not saying that you have to predict how someone's going to act, because there's Antonio Brown types out there that just go off. They just go crazy, right? And stuff happens, whatever. But you got to have a good feel for how Aiyuk's going to act. Yeah. And especially considering he's been in the building for 4 years. This isn't a guy that you just drafted or, you do have to have a feel for this. And look, timeline, they botched this. Financially, they've botched this. Asset valuation in terms of when and how to move off someone, they've botched this. Allowing him to start negotiating with everyone. Yep. Well, now you put all the eggs in his basket, and so New England might have the best offer. New England might give him the most money. Yep. He doesn't want to go to New England. Yep. So you're limiting the amount of teams that are out in play for you to get the best haul back.
There's no doubt.
And I go back to the Buckner deal, and it sucked, and I didn't love the deal, whatever. But it happened so quick and so fast that I think it was the only way it was going to work. You rip the Band-Aid off. In this situation, you are really, you're tempting fate here. You're tempting your locker room. You're playing with people's, moving forward, how they're going to perceive you in negotiations. So I go back to KYP. Know your personnel. And they've kind of botched that.
No, they have botched it. They have botched it the whole way. And he came out and said that he wanted to deal shortly after the Super Bowl. And how can you not, just having a feel for the league?
Exactly.
A feel for the league, knowing that, boy, all these receivers are up. Damn, Amon-Ra St. Brown may get paid. Damn, Nico Collins may get paid in Houston. Wow, A.J. Brown may get re-up. Whoa, Devontae Smith. Whoa, Tyreek Hill. Whoa, Jalen Waddle. There's all these wide receivers. I can't even name them all that got all these monsters extensions. And the Niners waited and waited and waited. It was like, uh-oh. And Brandon Aiyuk said, well, the value's going up and up and up, and his agent knows what's going on, and his agent is doing a good job saying that, hey, we're going to stand firm here, and we're going to get this done. Now, with Brandon Aiyuk, you say, know your personnel. And this is what I want to know, and we may never get the answer when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk. He was in the doghouse his second year, and he wasn't pleased. And he, obviously Trent Sherfield started that first game against Detroit. He didn't really come on, midway through the year. He's played against Arizona. But I wonder if if Brandon Aiyuk has never quite gotten over being in the doghouse, because I don't know where his relationship is with Kyle Shanahan. How's that relationship with Kyle? We know Debo's really cool with Kyle Shanahan. We know Kittle's really cool with Kyle Shanahan. Brock and Shanahan have a good rapport. Obviously, McCaffrey has Shanahan at his wedding, and they've known each other for many, many years because Kyle used to babysit him. But where's the relationship with Brandon Aiyuk and Kyle Shanahan? And what got me thinking about that, Shasky, about whether or not Brandon Aiyuk has got, because maybe he's held on to it and said, oh, you guys have had me in the doghouse? Wait until I ball out and it's contract time.
Well,
I'm not going to forget what you guys did to me my second year.
Well, and that's like, okay, you heard Debo as we came in, like, it's a business, It's a business. I think it is a business, but I think it's very personal for a lot of these guys. And I get it.
It is personal. Are you committed to his personal?
Yeah, but you know what? Like, that's more, honestly, in this modern day, that's more believable than all these guys saying it's a business and I just act like a robot. Right. Most of you don't. And that's okay. I don't expect you to. In fact, I want you to take it. You don't think Brady took it personal for 25 years that he was drafted in the 6th round?
Absolutely.
I mean, my God, he's still ticked off. How about Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan's sitting at his Hall of Fame induction speech, mad at players that dissed him, coaches that cut him.
I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown can name every wide receiver drafted before him. Draymond Green could name every player drafted before him.
So, like, to me, like, I love, like, and I've this year more than ever, I've heard more it's a business. It's not. Yes, it's a business, but it's simultaneously deeply personal. You know why? Because it's your career.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I get that. So your point about Shanahan and Aiyuk is actually a great one, because you're taking, like, does Aiyuk feel X, Y, and Z? Because I keep going back to Shanahan, and I'm saying to myself, I don't know how Shanahan views Aiyuk. I don't know how Shanahan envisions him moving forward. I don't understand what he sees in terms of the value he's bringing to the table. Why hasn't he stepped in?
Well, Matt Barrows brought this up yesterday after Michael Silver wrote an article about Shanahan being annoyed that he's been at practice, but he's not practicing because he's healthy, and he's watching his receivers drop like flies here, especially his rookies, and Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall. Matt Barrows was asked about the Aiyuk situation and whether or not, or what's annoying Kyle Shanahan about the Aiyuk situation.
There were a couple instances where Brandon Aiyuk is out there. He's watching from the sideline, and John Lynch kind of walks over and either kind of takes him to the spot where John watches practice, or in one instance, I watched this, he kind of takes him all the way back into the team headquarters. So, I mean, I guess that could be a sense that they'd rather have him out of sight when he's around. The other part of it is that there's this ridiculous notion that he arrived with a neck and a back issue, and that's why he's not practicing, not because of any contract. That's officially why he's not practicing. So maybe that's what's annoying Shanahan, that if you're here, if you're healthy, if we're dealing with all sorts of real injuries at wide receiver, and they are, you ought to be back out here. You're under contract. You should be practicing with your team.
So that's, but Shanahan can't be mad about that, because Shanahan's been in this league forever. He's been in this league for a long, long time. He understands what's going on with the player and the agent and what's going on with the contract stuff. He knows that. And Shanahan admitted, it's like, hey, who was it that Shanahan said, Shanahan and Litch, you're at a podium. Maybe it was last year or whatnot. Forget who it was, but they were saying, yeah, if I was him, I wouldn't get on the field either. Maybe it been Nick Bosa. Maybe it been Nick Bosa saying, yeah, he's smart. He can't get on the field. Yeah. So what's the difference with Brandon Aiyuk? I'm not saying both players are the same, and it's not the same situation.
Yeah.
I understand what Nick Bosa means to this football team and who he is in this league, and I understand where Brandon Aiyuk's status is with this football team. But when you look at the contract situation, a year left on the deal. You don't want to play on that last year of the rookie deal. But you want to come to camp. You want to play for the 49ers. Bosa held out, stayed away, came 3 days before the Pittsburgh Steelers game, and they mentioned it. Yeah, if I was Bosa, I wouldn't step on the field. So why is Shanahan? Is it because he's a former wide receiver and he thinks that, maybe he didn't get a shot at Texas? I have no idea. But Shanahan, all of a sudden, you're annoyed that Aiyuk's not practicing?
I don't.
At least he's there.
I don't get it.
Bosa was in Florida, out of sight, out of mind. Trent Williams right now is East Texas, out of sight, out of mind.
What about him saying that John Lynch didn't want him on the field? So when I was there with Debo was holding in. He had a giant chain.
Yeah.
He was standing. There's two fields. They're next to each other. Imagine two fields right next to each other. For those that have never been to practice, he was in the middle of the two fields, kind of dancing around, and then he'd be on the far wall, if you're the end zone sides, if you will, where no one's allowed to kind of stand except player personnel, and that's where John Lynch will stand from time to time, which is kind of the area that I'm in my mind envisioning where they're saying he's standing. Debo was in that area, but he was allowed on the field, and he was bouncing around, he was talking with everybody. And it was always like these murmurs. I think it was only 4 or 5 days, where he was holding in, hey, they're going to get a deal done, blah, blah, blah. This one where they're taking him off the field, there's just some weirdness here. And I was listening to Mayoko on his podcast yesterday.
49ers Talk podcast.
Yeah, thank you, with Jennifer Lee Chan. And he even said it. And you and I kind of talked about this day one. He's like, I've been coming to a lot of camps. There's just not the same energy this year. Something's a little off. And I'm like, damn, Mayoko doesn't just say that.
Yeah, he doesn't say that.
And he said, Debo's run a few people over. It was something like that. But there's just, and he didn't use the word juice, but I know what he was thinking. Because I said to B, there's just not that same juice. I know it's day one and something feels off. And I'm not blaming I think it's a variety of things. I don't think it's just one thing. But all of this stuff is mounting up and it's just.
Well, I think the exhaustion of losing that Super Bowl, I think